Today I'll speak with Jeff Brandt about law firm operations during COVID-19. Jeff described it as good enough. But what is good enough, and where should law firms focus for the next 4 or 5 months? Jeff is asking us to think about virtualization of legal proceedings, but on the other hand, about water cooler activities that unifies the firm while working from home. Welcome to Law Firm Weekly. It's good to have you here. Jeff Brandt is the CIO of Jackson Kelly in Charleston, West Virginia. He is a strategic executive with proven ability to lead large-scale change initiatives. He's also the editor of the popular PinHawk Law Technology Daily Digest, a link to which you'll find right here below. Jeff, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me, Shai.
You know, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you really implanted this bug in my brain, which is this idea that looking at the last 4 months or so of working at a distance because of COVID-19, that law firms, many of them, scrambled and managed to get to what you call the good enough plateau. But before we get to how do we go from here, maybe you can talk a little bit about what is it that Jackson Kelly focused on, and yourself, of course, in helping them in the first 3 or 4 months.
Well, of course, the first big push was simply to get everybody out of the office. We did that in stages. So for us, it was clearly a function of getting your professionals out, getting the support staff out, and making sure that everybody had the capabilities to be able to work from home. For us, that was a lot of troubleshooting. Everybody, I don't think I'm unique in this. I've spent the last 35 years trying to avoid people's home computers because I've got a good staff, great staff, and we do well with 350 PCs. 700 is a little bit overwhelming. But for us, the first thing was just get everybody out, get them situated, and getting everybody having the local access capabilities, everything that they needed to basically do their work at a minimum good enough level. And then for us, every couple of weeks seemed to raise that level of what was good enough. So it became, I'm comfortable, I've got my home internet troubleshot. How do I now do these additional things? And for us, that's just continued over the course of the 3 months.
So I guess from the point of view of your lawyers, are they in the same place? Like if you were to talk to, listen, if you talk to 2 lawyers, then you'll have different opinions. But what is essentially kind of good enough for them? What does it really mean at this point?
I think we've raised the bar on what has been good enough. It was good enough to be able to get into our system and be able to do the things that they used to do when it was convenient remote access. Now, of course, that's changed into 24/7, 7 days a week access and work. So it became a function of, I used to be able to do this much work. Now help me do this much work or this much work. A lot of it was comfort level. I know how to do this. Normally I turn this over to secretary or support or our data processing center. And now it's a function of, I really can't do that. So how do I do more of these things myself? It's a little bit of acceptance of, we have some curmudgeons, every law firm I think does. But I think it's a function of all those folks really got to see a lot of those arguments that they've made dry up. Well, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do this. And of course, in COVID-19, it was, even better than a client dictate because there was no choice. You would do it or there's nothing else, no other options, no plan B as part of that. So a lot of people, I think, became a lot more accepting and a lot more willing to try. And I think that a lot of those, like I said, preconceived notions kind of burned up. And as part of that, we have a lot greater acceptance, a lot of people doing a lot more than they would have otherwise had there not been the situation to be forced to work from home.
In the context of lawyers and how they're adjusting and adapting, what is it that you think and now we're talking about the future. Now we're talking about the near-term future, the 3, 4, 5 months, the chasm, as I call it, this period of still many of them working away from the office and so on and so forth. What is it that they need and that you think firms need to step up to, either yours and other firms, to provide? And I'm talking about lawyers, and especially as it relates, of course, to the work product and its delivery to their clients.
Well, I think it's interesting. Part of what you talk about when you have any kind of team, any kind of functional group, so practice area, subspecialty, you name it within the legal practice part, it becomes a function of what is the goodwill, what is the teamwork that has been generated to date, and we're all kind of living off goodwill and that knowledge and intimate work capabilities that we've generated over the years, being in the office and working with each other. And I think that a lot of our lawyers have done practice group meetings where it's half serious, it's half who's got the greatest looking dog, kid, pet, who's grown the most hair, who's gained the most weight, all these different kind of things that just kind of try and transcend not only the water cooler work piece, but the water cooler socialization piece. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Craig Ball had a really great article about presentations, and I think that's something that is going to become, right now it's kind of the extra, the top tier. And he was talking about green screens and designing PowerPoints so that it was like a weather map, and so you're in front of all this, and so designing your presentation, your text and everything so that you allow for room for yourself as part of that view. And I think, as I said, I think for folks like him that do a lot of presentations day in and day out, that's high-end stuff. I think we're going to see that kind of drop down to the basic minimal kind of support. And I think we're going to see that in a lot of other areas. People are experimenting with court and trial by Zoom or by video conference, all those different things, mediations. Our mediators, I think, went nutso in the first week or so, and then they got into that pattern, they got into that groove, they got comfortable with the tools, and now it's nothing to do mediations by Zoom, pushing people in and out of rooms, all those things which at one point would have been pretty high-end features, things that people don't normally do as part of their conferencing and meeting work, and now it's second nature to them all. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see, in our case, our firm, I think, was pretty well established. We didn't need much in the way of new technologies, but what I've seen happen over the last 3 months as we're pushed further and further into each and every one of those applications. So it's really been, okay, I'm using 50% of this now. So 2 months ago it was 40%. I'm looking to do 60 and 70 and 80% as we go into the future. So I think that's really going to be the thing.
So what you're saying is virtual proceedings, the uptake for virtual proceedings, let me kind of use it in a generic kind of as a terminology, is being taken up. Some of it, to your point, started before, but certainly there's more impetus for it right now. And it's interesting, I had a conversation with a Brazilian law firm with 900 or so staff, and she described the engagement that they have through those kind of virtual proceedings and hearings, and how it's changing how well prepared their lawyers need to be, because their clients can now log into those virtual proceedings in order to, see what's going on, where up until now they were all over Brazil physically and they couldn't really show up in those hearings. So you're basically saying this is changing not only in the short term, but potentially it may change in the long term how much of a remote legal procedure of any kind may happen virtually as opposed to physically. And so you're starting to step up to, or maybe continuing to step up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. I had a conversation yesterday where we were talking about a trial, and physically, how do we do this? We've got 12 plus people in basically three different teams that need to be part of this. Do we do a Zoom kind of Brady Bunch, Hollywood Squares kind of approach where everybody's in a separate room with their own camera? How do you rotate people in and out? I mean, and you look at it from if you're talking about a jury trial and so on, what you get to see as the jury is very, very different. I can look around if I'm in the courtroom. I can look around, do anything I want. I can be focusing in on whatever I want to focus in on. If all I've got to do is watch a camera, then whoever controls that camera controls what I'm seeing, and to a certain point shapes my perception of what I'm looking at.
The last question I want to ask you is obviously related to the most important part of what law firms do, which is working with their clients. Are you noticing, and you've alluded to it and more than just alluded to it, but are you noticing a trend in, say, how over the next 5 to 10 months, lawyers will be working with their clients because of distance?
I think again we're breaking down some preconceived notions that the only way to do something was to meet in person. The only way was to be physically in the same room. And I think again that good enough scale that you and I talked about earlier is on that curve. It's rising. It was good enough to be able to have just a one-on-one teleconference. Now it's okay. Well, I need 4 or 5 parties as part of that. I need to be able to present. I need to be able to do this or that as part of that. I think we're going to see an incredible change in that. We're actually reaching out to our clients, trying to find out exactly how they view their organization going forward so that we can try and run on parallel tracks and make sure that we meet all the needs that they see potentially. And again, I can guess at what our particular clients may or may not want to do, but to get it firsthand from the horse's mouth, so to speak, them telling us, this is how we see our business changing. This is how we see the relationship, not necessarily changing, but maturing and evolving. That's the stuff that's gold that allows us to be able to say, hey, here, we can pivot left, we can pivot right, we can provide whatever these services are that you need, socially distant, remote, and safe services.
Well, that's great. We can talk for at least a couple of more hours, and I think maybe, hopefully, you'll come back again and we'll continue this discussion. So I really want to thank you for taking the time. I want to point out to everybody watching that the whiteboard behind you may contain all the secrets of Jeff's plans for the next 12 months. So, maybe you can kind of zoom in and check out to see what this progressive CIO is doing. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again.